Every time there's a new election cycle in the United States, one big fear looms that a third-party candidate will run, split the vote of one of the two major parties, and hand the election to a candidate who is not the most favored. This happens because the United States uses a fundamentally broken election method. But contrary to popular opinion, this has nothing to do with the Electoral College. The problem is that we use force ranking, which violates a mathematical principle called Arrow's Impossibility Theorem. Now, here's how that works. Every election has what we call the Condorcet candidate, named after the French mathematician. It's the candidate most favored by the voters. In a perfect world, the Condorcet candidate should win every election. But assume someone breaks from his party and runs as a third-party candidate. He'll usually take some of the votes away from the Condorcet candidate. And now, look who wins. It's the other candidate, who is less favored by the voters. The reason this can happen is that voters in the United States are forced to rank the candidates. By being allowed to vote for only one, you are in effect ranking one candidate as the best. Arrow's Impossibility Theorem, named for the economist Kenneth Arrow, states that in a rank-based election, no fair system exists when there are three or more candidates. Now, there are at least two very easy ways to fix this. One is called range voting, where voters give a score to every candidate. You might give the favorite candidate a 10, you might hate the other guy and give him a 0, and you might think the third guy is okay and give him a 7. The election is tallied by averaging the scores for every candidate, and in both real-world elections and in simulations, the Condorcet candidate wins every time. A variation of this is called approval voting, where you vote for either yes or no for every candidate. This lets voters give the nod to every candidate they'd be happy with. Once again, we see that in approval voting, the candidate who is best liked always wins. Range voting and approval voting are both immune to voting blocks being split, and candidates of all parties always get the result that reflects how well they are actually favored by the voters. Both systems allow, and in fact encourage, third-party candidates, with no harm done to the major party candidates. And that's all there is to it. If you want U.S. elections to work better, tell your congressman to introduce legislation to dump the mathematically invalid rank voting and adopt either range voting or approval voting. I'm Brian Dunning from the Skeptoid podcast at skeptoid.com.